should really thank you again for being the person who led to me ending up at Ayahuasca Spirit Europe with Wheeler and Tamara there, because that was an incredible experience. And it was really directly through, before we connected personally, I was already using your channel, for reviews for ayahuasca retreats and things like that. And so it's already just this incredible resource that's just absolutely essential, because you mentioned the kind of diet and things as being part of the healing process, but the carers, the community you're in, the group you're in on the retreat, all of those things, the shaman you're working with, is so crucial, right, to have a kind of healthy container. Mm-hmm. And so I felt like that was an absolutely essential step that you really helped me make, was to identify the right people.
Oh, glad, mate.
And so I think it's a hugely important role you're playing. And so with these ayahuasca reviews, like, I guess, did you you see that there was, like, when you were trying to find retreats, that there was maybe like I don't want to say gap in the market, because it's not like you're trying to set up a business to make money, but like there was a need, I guess, for kind of clear laying out which retreats are worth going to.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of my plan. It was just something where I thought at first I could do that. I didn't see anybody else necessarily doing that, like just talking about these things as if you would talk about, like, as not to be flippant, but like a holiday resort or something like this. This is good, and this is why it's good, and to separate out the experience, the place itself, and the care and the team from the medicine experience, because you can have an amazing medicine experience at a very poor, kind of retreat, or vice versa. You could spend a fortune on the most luxurious retreats and have a terrible, very weak, perhaps, you just don't connect with medicine at all. So I wanted to put the actual trip experience to one side and just really sort of offer as best as I could an objective opinion of, this center is clean, this one is expensive, this one is, the food is good, this one, the staff were a bit arsey, and it kind of, it went hand in hand with just that I'd been on a few of these retreats by the time when I decided to do this. And as you do, you walk around with your phone and you're taking all these pictures, you're taking all these videos that you never do anything with on your phone. I thought, well, I've got all this stuff now, I may as well do something with it. And so that just seemed like a natural thing, was to use the pictures I'd taken, talk about things in a way I thought I was suited to do as this kind of everyman thing. I wasn't completely in this, world where I was, seeing myself as a completely spiritual person, throwing myself on the feet of the shaman, and I wasn't a sort of just a sort of coming at it from a purely scientific sort of point of view. I was just coming at it from like a guy who's like, does this work or not? So it did initially start off like that, and that was kind of my intention with the channel at first, was that I would just keep publishing these reviews as I go on my travels around these different centers. And obviously that's just got completely derailed over this last year, because there's just been nowhere to go. Everywhere's been cancelled. There's no, it's tricky to even leave the country. So I had 3 retreats planned this year, and for various reasons, I've not made it to any of them. And most of that, is because they were just cancelled. So how much more of that I'll be able to do is completely up in the air, because who knows when retreats are going to go back to normal. It's, I'm still in touch with guys like Wheeler and Tamara from Ayahuasca Spirit, and they're just constantly having to shuffle their entire schedule back every like 3 months at a time. So it's the whole pandemic thing is going to change, everything socially on the planet anyway. It'll be interesting to see how retreat centers recover from it, because I know some have, I've got a few people who I know out in Peru, and they've gone under. They've just not been able to sort of sustain. Their entire economy is based around an influx of tourists, and so if there's no way of getting into the country, then that's gone. And it's one thing to last out 3 months or 6 months doing that, but we're now going into sort of year 2 of it, or it's been a year anyway. So yeah, we'll have to see. Well, there's something I wanted to if you backtrack a bit to the retreat thing, because it's something I was having a conversation with someone the other day, and I think one thing I'm working on a video about it at the moment, is that I think there is perhaps a perception around what it is actually happening on these retreats. And I think you just pinned it down perfectly when, we're talking about sort of the diet and the care and stuff like that. Because I think it's very easy to look at one of these retreats and say, like, oh, you are getting 4 cups of drugs. You're paying, like, whatever it costs, like say it's $1,000 or whatever, to go away for a week, and you get 4 cups of drugs in return. And that's not it at all. Like, I can make 4 cups of drugs here in my kitchen. That's not why I go to a retreat. I go to it for precisely what you just mentioned. I want that care system around that framework where you can sort of really work on these things, because everything else is just done for you. It's, there is a sort of a psychedelic tradition to sort of guide you through it. There are people there to sort of, help you work through it as you're going through this, what can be quite an ordeal of a process. Your meals are all made for you. Your kind of bed's made for you. Everything that you need is done for you. And it just gives you that space to do it. And that is, so much more than the 4 cups of drugs. And it sort of baffles me sometimes that people don't see that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, I was really surprised by how, at Ayahuasca Spirit, there were these group shares where you would, I think it was every day, you'd sit in a circle and you'd just kind of chat about, your experiences. And for me, like that was a really crucial thing. So at that point, I'd gone through a lot of psychedelic kind of healing process by myself. But when a lot of us, we're dealing with kind of interpersonal, like for me, it was pretty standard early life kind of feeling certain ways about, how I've been treated and stuff. And then if you're dealing with that all in your mind, you can only take it to a certain extent. But then if you tell your story and then people hear you and go, oh man, that sounds like it was really hard. Like that can be a huge moment. And I mean, for me, I made a video about my experience there. And that was actually a really crucial moment in my own personal journey of kind of healing, was to realize, because a lot of the time this stuff is tied up with kind of this like guilt and shame and all this kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And when you stand in front of people and you say, I had this vision where this happened and that made me feel this way, and people just listen and you feel heard, like you can't put a price on that. I think that's something there isn't much, Western medicine doesn't, I guess in therapy it does, but in those kind of communal settings, it doesn't really have a way of offering that. And I think that's just a really powerful experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's that thing of like, if I went into work on Thursday when I'm back into work and kind of opened up in that way, or even if I was out with my friends in a bar and opened up in that way to that, then I just don't think we know how to deal with it as a culture. But by having this space where you can do it, and I've been in those kind of group share situations where they said, Rob, do you want to share something? And I sat up and I was completely fine. And then as I started talking, I just burst out crying. Right. I had no idea it was there, that I just needed to have this kind of emotional outpouring. And I felt so much better as well for getting it out, and it just completely took me by surprise. And it really sort of came flooding out. So yeah, there is, I think, so much more within this retreat space, which I think is worth exploring. And I think part of the challenge around sort of retreats is that, I mean, first of all, there is this cost barrier to them, which not everyone can afford. Right. But then there's also people sort of, again, get very hung up on this sort of like, that it's going to be sort of very traditional or very sort of woo-woo. And I think that there's a place in someone's life for both these things. You can do the traditional and sort of get the benefit of it without necessarily sort of, diving head first into it. And that's one of the reasons why I liked sort of Wheeler and Tamara and Ayahuasca Spirit so much, is that you can sort of import this traditional framework without it being stuffed down your throat and without them sort of beating you over the head with sort of Mother Ayahuasca or all this stuff. But yeah, I think there's great value in these retreat settings, and I've really felt the absence of that this year, because for the last 5 years or something, I've been away on at least one retreat a year, and just this year I've just seen them all evaporate around me, and And in this year, where it's been the most stressful of all years, then I was like, God, I could just really do like 2 weeks just away in the jungle, just no phone, just, is there anywhere I can get to where I can just turn off the noise of 2020? And yeah, I mean, hopefully something will come up in this year, I should say now.
Yeah.
But I'm not holding my breath.
Yeah, I think also the that thing you mentioned, the kind of cathartic emotional release that happens in the group share situation. Yeah, it's not like we're saying that we need to be in this mode all the time and that everyone should be walking around constantly bursting into tears if they need to. There are times and places for things, and I think that's what's really powerful about approaching psychedelics in a non-recreational way as well. If like once a year someone's like, I'm going to spend 6 hours, I'm going to take some mushrooms, and if I feel emotions, I'm going to feel them and I'm going to let them out. That's like, I think most people can go through their lives not realizing they never really have that release. And it can just be half an hour in a group share, in a therapy session, in a psychedelic experience. And it can be transformative just to drop that emotion, have that emotional release. So yeah, I think that it's not that when you're in the pub with your friends that you need to, we need to have a culture where we're constantly kind of blabbing all the time. But yeah, I think that's really valuable.
Yeah, and I think the thing around that is that it's like I said, I could do psychedelics here at home, but having those kind of cues and that kind of space, and you don't necessarily kind of even realize that there is a space being held as you sit in these circles or it's in a maloka somewhere in the jungle. But I don't think I could do that on my own. I mean, it sounds so simple that it's almost preposterous, but it's and I like to think I'm reasonably intelligent, but I don't just have the kind of I couldn't just put those steps in place for myself just to like, okay, Rob, just sit there, have a think about it, and then have a good cry. It just doesn't work like that. You need the kind of the psychic prodding somehow to get it out of you.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, for me, I think the mushroom, like psychedelics, can often just be the psychic prod I need, but everyone's different. And so it's good to have, as you said at the start, it's good to have all these different tools in your toolkit. And as I said, I'm definitely not saying that therefore you don't need the community setting. So I think that's really powerful.